What's up, YouTube? It is your girl Trisha checking back in. Yes, not only am I coming as a mentor, but I also want to let you guys know I am the founder of Let's Direct Our Own Path, where I do mentorships, where I do one-on-ones, and where I do help provide housing. And again, if I don't have a house available for you, I do make sure that I have someone who is available to provide you housing in this season. And today I got a message for y'all. And your girl been busy. I know, just as I'm preparing um myself and to bring you guys different words, he also have to make sure that I am out here fighting a good fight and doing my part too, right? So I do apologize. I ain't got as many messages throughout the week, but I at least try to give y'all something every couple of days if I can. Um, yeah. But what I want to talk to you guys about in this season is he said we need to go for broke in this season. He said this is the season where we need to go for broke. He said the bride must be ready for her king. Ooh, he said the bride must be ready for her king in this season. He said this is our moment. This is the season where we got to lay it all down on the line. He said, this is the season you just got to lay it on the line. And he said, you got to step into this fire boldly in this season. He said, we have to be able to refuse holding back of who we are. He said, you got to refuse this. He said, because this is the season where we are not just fighting for temporary victories. He said we are fighting for our legacy. We are fighting for our generations. We are fighting to break the chains of bondage in this season. He said we are fighting as the bride of Christ to prepare ourselves for the returning of our kings. He said, in this season, the church got to get ready. The people of the church, anybody who's saying that they rocking with Christ, he said, get ready. He said, this is the season where he is calling his people into an intimacy covenant. He said he is calling us into this intimacy covenant with him. He said, we are not just believers, but we are preparing ourselves for Jesus. He said, and we got to remember what that is like. He said, remember what I told you in Ephesians 5 through 25. He said, husbands, love your wife just as the Christ also loved the church and gave himself for her, that he might sanctify and cleanse her with the washing of water by the word, that he might present her to himself a glorious church, not having spots or wrinkles or any such thing, but she should be holy without blemish. He said in this season, he is calling deep to deep. He said he is calling us into intimacy. He said the relationship. He said he's calling us into relationship with us. He said we are coming to Christ. He said, are you coming into your Christ likeness? He said this is a whole relationship, and he wants to know, are you holding up your end of the bargain? I was like, he is like, right now we are being called to prepare, to purify ourselves. He says, so that way when you step into his glory, you know what that is like. He said, right now, as his bride, we are being prepared. Mm. Whew. I said, we're being prepared. He said, we are being prepared. He said, that's why he's making sure you sit with him. He said, that's why he's asking us to step into the spirit with him. He said, because he needs us to be living in our righteousness. He needs our faithfulness. He needs to know if we have the devotion that we need for God. He said, right now, that is why he is calling us for this faithful moment. He said, so right now, what should be mattering to us today is that call to holiness. He said, because when he calling his believers into righteousness, that is us keeping our hearts and our lives in purity in preparation for him. He said, in the faithfulness of Christ, we got to understand, just like we, he's calling the bride, which is his church, into him. He said, we should be thinking of ourselves as brides and remaining faithful to our groom, the church, to Jesus. He said, we need to be remaining faithful to him in this season. He said, so we got to be able to know what we need to reject. And he said, and just because we reject certain things in life, or certain things that we want to hold on to, that he got to take from us. He said, in this season, he said, don't compromise yourself. He said, but instead, be eager with expectation. He said, just like a bride on her waiting for her wedding day, we should be rejoicing each time we wake up and we know that we're getting closer. We're getting ourselves into alignment to who he is. He said, just as the bride, we need to also now be preparing ourselves, purifying ourselves, making sure that we're standing in our righteousness that we need to be able to stand in. He said, because as a bride, time is nearing. He said, you got to also know that he's preparing his brides. He's purifying his brides. His brides must be ready in this season. He said, this is why he's telling us to go for broke, because he said he is not leaving nothing behind that belongs to him. He said, are you picking up what he's dropping down to you? He said, are you picking up what he's dropping down to you in this season? He said, because in this season, he is calling us to crush the serpent's heads. He said, right now we are being called into victory. He said, and when he's calling us in the victory, he wants you to know this is not for the weak hearted. He said, I apologize, but right now, this is not a season for fear or hesitation. He said, the enemy is moving in. He said, in the enemy, he said, don't you hear him while he around here slithering around? And the war is at your door. He said, don't you feel that the war is at your door? Things that you didn't have to fight before, now you're fighting against them. He said, don't you feel that certain things that was used to come easy, now you're fighting for? He said, because the enemy is at your door. Mm. He said, but as his bride, he said, you got to know that you're fighting for the living God. And that you're being called to fight in this season. He said, this is why we're going for broke, because we in a fight. He said, and sometimes you got to throw it all on the line. He said, sometimes you got to put it all out there. He said, because right now he needs you to be able to crush the enemy beneath your feet. And he said, the only way you're going to be able to crush the enemy beneath your feet is if you step it into this with some boldness. He said, you can't come in here weak. He said, this ain't for the weak hearted. He said, sorry, but not sorry, not in this season when his kingdom is at hand. He said, you got to understand that he already has spoke this to us, and he already let you know that the battle was won. He said, and you got to understand that the victory belonged to those who are willing to step forward. He said, you got to understand when you're going for broke, you got to know how to step forward. And he said, you got to come up in this thing boldly. He said, you got to remember what he told you. He said, when I start calling for my bride, he said, because I knew what I wanted. He said, you forgot when I was courting you and we kind of was going back and forth and you kept going in and out of your flesh and into the spirit. He said, we kept going back and forth. He said, and then he said, after you had to sit with me for a while, you started drawing into me a little bit. He said, and as you started drawing into me a little bit, he said, we was able to start developing a little friendship. He said, and as we started developing a friendship, he said, I was able to make known to you the plans of my father. He said, and as I started making known to the plan of my father with you, he said, I said, baby, come me. He said, I gotta put a ring on this. He said, you gotta be my bride. He said, we didn't start getting intimate. I started letting you see into me. I started seeing into you. You started letting me in your secret rooms. He said, you started letting me get he said, I started getting some holiness up inside of you, baby. He said, and I said, when I seen this, I said, I gotta put a ring on it. He said, anything that I want, I put rings on it. He said, baby, you gotta know who I am. He said, if you ain't never had an intimacy moment like this, he said, because I'm drawing you near to me. He said, Flesh can only get you so far. He said, but when I put a ring on it, ooh, he said, but when I put a ring on it, he said, I'm telling you, this is to death do us part. He said, when we didn't got to this part, when I'm bringing you in as my bride, he said, I got to let you know what's going to come up in between us. He said, and that's why I got to tell you about the enemy. And he said, that's why I got to let you know that I warn you in the Bible about the serpent schemes. He said, I'll take you back to Genesis when the serpent thought he can come in and start deceiving and whispering lies and bringing destruction. He said, but I declared something. He said, I told him, he shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise the heel, and you shall bruise his heel. He said, in this prophecy, he knew he was going to get up in your mind. He said, oh, he knew he was going to get up in there. And he said he knew he was going to start trying to mess it all up. He said, but that's why when we were courting and you kept coming in and out of your flesh, he said, because I knew he was going to get up in there. He said, and that's why I told you, step all the way over here in the spirit. He said, come out of your flesh and step up over here. He said, we got to go beyond this in order to grasp what I'm trying to get you to in this season. He said, because when this first prophecy I had to speak over y'all was coming, he said, I had to get you into a spot where you knew how to meditate. I had to get you to a spot where you had to drown out the noise and that you could start hearing my voice. He said, because when you start hearing my voice, he said, I had to he said, that's when my prophecy started coming. He said, and in the moment you drowned out that noise, he said, now I told you, you're going to be able to bruise his heel because now you gotta be able to learn how to crush him. He said in this season, he's teaching you how to crush him. Oh, he said, so he asked us today, are you able to crush the serpent? Are you able to crush him? He said, because the enemy is in your garden. Oh, yeah. He said he hiding amongst them weeds, amongst them friends you didn't know was right there. He said you got to be able to listen on the tongues of the way people are speaking to you in this season, because you might think they're a friend, but you're not knowing that they could be a friend of me. He said, and you got to watch those close to you. He said, because they wrapping around. They wrapping around the places of God where God is planning life. He said they're wrapping around it. He said, so in this season, you got to be able to now look and start cutting off the heads of these serpents. He said, when you start seeing them spring up, he said, you're going to have to cut the head off of them. He said, because you got to get bold in this season. He said, this ain't the time for you to get faint hearted. This ain't the time. He said, because the enemy is trying to weaken you. And he said, right now, you got to expose them lies. He said, right now, you got to be willing to break down the strongholds. He said, tear them down. He said, and tear down any altar that was built up against his name. He said, the name that he has, the name that he given you once y'all got into this and he told you you was his bride. He said, oh yeah, you're going to have to cut the head off of that serpent. He said that serpent ain't got no place up in here. Not in this season. He said, no, 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 no. He said, you gotta be ready to crush the serpent. He said, you're gonna have to stand boldly against this deception. He said, the enemy is trying to infiltrate the body of Christ. He said, and whisper lies. Oh, just as he did in the garden. He said, no, baby. No. He said, but one thing you got to know that the truth shall set you free. He said, it's truth to set you free. He said, so walk in victory, not in fear. He said, Satan has already lost. He said, behold, I give you authority to trample on serpents and scorpions and over all the powers of the enemy, and nothing by any means shall hurt you. He said, in this season, while you are preparing for your king, he said, you have to fight for an uncertain future. He said, because when the trumpet sound and the bride is raised up, you got to know what time it is. He said, that's Jesus. Oh, he says, you got to know that we've seen this fight before. He said, in this times that we're going through, we've seen this fight before. He said, don't you remember when Moses had to go up against Pharaoh? He said, we seen this fight when Pharaoh wanted to bring out all these warlocks and magicians to stand against his power, when Moses was telling them to let his people free. He said, this is the moment we're in, when we're telling Pharaoh, let his people free. He said, and yes, the enemy is finna try to throw out the warlocks and magicians. He said, but you got to remember what happened when Moses threw down that staff. He said, remember when Moses threw down the staff and then there go Pharaoh magicians who wanted to throw down one? He said, but one thing you got to understand is they power have no power against his. Oh, God said no counterfeit power should stand against him. He said no counterfeit power can. He said when you know you are with me and you are on, he said, baby, when you know who team you own. When you know who team you own, can no counterfeit power come up against you? He said they tried to get some real estate up in there. He said, and for a while we was giving them free real estate up in our mind, just letting them hold us and weigh us and weigh us and weigh us and weigh us down. He said, but then when you got with me, he said, even though you came to me, you were weak and on your knees and crying and didn't know your right from wrong. He said, but baby, when you sat with me and I gave you my spirit and I had to give you this open heart surgery where I had to pour my love into you and where I had to show you how to love and where I had to show you some understanding so you could get some wisdom. He said, baby, can no counterfeit power come up against this? He said, no. So you got to ask yourself, do you believe in God's power? He said, ask yourself, do you believe in my power? Do you believe that you have the authority to stand over the enemy? He said, do you believe it? He said, do you believe that you can walk through the fire and not get burned? Mm. He said, do you believe it? He said, it ain't enough for him to tell you about it. He said, but do you believe it in this season? Mm, mm, mm. He said, in this season, the enemy will strike, but he will not prevail. He said, the enemy will try to strike in this season. Yeah. He said because he don't want you to get no further than where you at right now. He understands that you are trying to get above all principalities in your life. He said right now when he trying to get you a little confusion on your job, confusion with your kids, confusion with your school, confusion with your business. He said that's his tricks. He's trying to get you to give up. Cause like he told us, he said, remember, he told you in Genesis that he was going to have to bruise your head. He said, but he gave us power to stand up against this. He said, so when the serpent started whispering, don't let him silence you. He said, not in this season. He said, in the warlocks might perform all kind of signs. He said, but you got to remember that as long as you walking with him, they will be swallowed up by his power. He said, so don't get worried about no signs of no warlocks and no magician and the things that people trying to cast up on you. He said, not in this season. He said, do you know who power you got? He said, do you know who power you got? He said, and the enemy might try to poison you. But if you fix your eyes on God, he said, and believe, he said, then you're going to have to know that you will live. You will live through this. He said, but you got to know that in this season, he is calling every warrior prayer, every intercessor, every believer who is ready to see the kingdom of darkness fall. He said, this is the season where you put your whole armor of God on. And he said, and this is the season where you stand in your faith. And you speak the word to break every chain, to cast out every devil, to heal the sick, to stand in the fire and know that you will not be consumed. He said, this is the season because he has a season. He said, this is the season where the generation cannot be afraid. He said, this generation, he said, with the things that is going on in this world, he said, you cannot be afraid. He said, right now, you have to go forth. You cannot retreat. He said, this is not the season. He said, no surrender, no retreat. He said, this is the season you got to press. He said, throw your whole weight into this thing. He said, baby, go for broke. He said, just like, he said, you got to understand a bride, when she ready, when the king, he's ready, and he know that you his bride, he said, none can come up until that. Purify yourself. He said, purify yourself and stand. He said, will you stand with me? He said, and take hold. Take your place in the season. He said, that's your place. Can't nobody do your place like you can do your place. He said, don't give up your spot. This is your spot. He said, don't give up your spot. He said, if you don't know anything else in this season, he said, well, then baby, go for broke. He said, go and throw it all on the line. He said, put it all on the line. He said, because in this season, you will have to fight. He said, but what are you fighting for? And will you fight in his name? Oh, because he said, ain't nothing greater than the master. He said, ain't nothing he created greater than the master. He said, so by who power are you fighting with? He said, because when you're ready, you're going to know that it is time. He said, and let's go to war. He said, because in this season, you got to know what you are breaking. He said, because when it's all said and done, he said, you got to be able to know that the ultimate fulfillment of this relationship with him is when we get to our wedding feast. Ooh. He said, because when we get to our wedding feast, we're going to be glad and we're going to rejoice and we're going to give him his glory. Oh, he said, for the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his wife has made herself ready. And she'll be in fine linen. She'll be clean. She'll be bright. For the fine linen is the righteous act of the saints. He said, church, in this season, people of God, in this season, he said, ultimately, you got to get yourself in a position that you can be offered up. He said, because when he comes, he want to see his glory up on you. He said, when we finally reunite with him, oh, the union of Christ and his church in eternity, he said, that is going to be the best victory he have ever seen. He said to see somebody who came into his presence so weak, for him to put a power in you so mighty, and that you believed in your power so much that you were able to wield the power that was in your hands that he gave you, and that you were able to step into it boldly, confidently, and weren't scared to exercise it. Oh, he said, when you believe like this, you will be fully joined with him in his kingdom. He said, and that's where he's trying to get you to. He said, so right now, you are just in your preparing season. He said, and right now, all he wants you to do is, baby, throw it on the line and go for broke in this season. He said, don't hesitate. Don't hesitate. He said, your hour is now. Ooh, and y'all, before I leave, I'm going to read y'all some, because as I was reading this today, I love it. He said, oh, how I love you. It says, oh, how I love your law. I meditate on it all day long. Your commands are always with me and make me wiser than my enemies. I have more insight than all my teachers, for I meditate on your statutes. I have more understanding than the elders, for I obey your precepts, meaning his rules. I have kept my feet from evil paths, so that I might obey your word. I have not departed from your law, for your law have taught me. How sweet are your words to my taste, sweeter than honey to my mouth. I gain understanding from your precepts. Therefore, I hate every wrong path. He said, in this season, he is calling his brides. He said, are you one of my brides? And don't look at this as a gender thing. He is calling his people. He is calling us. He said, we are moving. He said, we didn't move from a friend. He said, let's get married. Ooh, he said, go on, let's get married. He said, stop playing with me and just go on and marry me. Oh, he said, in this season, what are you doing? He said, and if you're doing it for me, he said, if you're doing it for me, then he said, baby, this is the season where we go for broke. He said, we throw it all on the line. Ooh. He said, because you got to understand, whatever you give up in my name. Oh, he said, remember whatever you give up in my name, I shall return it to you tenfold. He said, do you know what kind of God you serve? It is y'all girl. I mean, excuse me. It is y'all girl Trisha checking back in with a late night message. And I just wanted to tell you, in this season, go for broke. He said, as a bride, you gotta be willing to prepare yourself for your king. For your king. He said, can you prepare yourself for your king? He said, because in this season, well, how he's moving and it's so mighty, he said, you got to get ready for this mighty season. He said, this is not the season to shrink. Sorry, but not sorry. He said, this is not the season for you to shrink. So he said, each one teach one. If you see your brother or sister crown tipping, he said, help them fix it. You ain't got to tell them you fixing it. Just go on and help them fix it in this season. Y'all, don't forget to press the like, subscribe, and share button. And don't forget to drop a comment. And if this is resonating with you, if this is resonating with you, or if you feeling like, hey, I need a mentor in this season, I'm feeling like I need some level up in this season, go ahead and tap in. My description is below. Yes. And if you're feeling led, I left my Cashapp down there. If you are feeling led, also plant a seed. If this is feeding you, oh, come on, y'all, in this season. He said, come on. He said, this ain't the time where you gotta hide. He said, this ain't the time for you to shrink. He said, but step boldly. It ain't enough to just watch. He said, but step boldly. Where your boldness at? He said, just too scared. Don't get scared in this season. He said, step boldly. Oh, yeah. It is your girl, Trisha. Until next time, you guys, love on each other. Yes. And I'll catch y'all in the next video. In this season, he said, it's your time.